Okay, welcome to the last exercise of your class. And what we're going to do is bring everything together here. So, what I'm going to do is give you an example from a corporation. So, an enterprise level example of how we can leverage not only the roles of manager and lead follower, but the behaviors of both and tie it to the culture change cycle. So, as a manager with a lead follower that is exhibiting ineffective behaviors as a lead follower, how can we influence that or diagnose it based on using our culture change cycle? And when you get done with this example, you'll be able to leverage the tools underneath this to be able to do the same thing on your own. So let's go into an example. Let's say that I am the CEO of a small production company. So we make boxes, something easy. And it's a relatively small company, so it's not a whole lot of management. It's a pretty flat organization. But I do have a director of operations. And his job as director of operations is to keep the plant running and make sure that we have enough boxes going out. And in that, there's a handful of supplies that we need for boxes. Since I'm not an expert in box stuff, I'm going to make it up, but we'll just say we have 10 items of inventory that we need. In order for our box plant to keep running, we need to make sure that we always have enough inventory in supply to keep the stuff running. So say the behavior or the shortcoming, the problem that I get is that on a regular basis, we have to at least slow the plant down or turn it off because we run out of or run low on certain inventory items. And as the CEO, that's a big problem, right? Because if I'm not producing boxes, I'm not making money. So when we look at our culture change cycle, we have environment choices, actions, assessments. Before we get into the actions, let's actually look at the different behaviors, specifically the behaviors of a lead follower, to assess where we're having a shortcoming. So within this particular series of behaviors, the one that I think we're missing is over-report progress, right? So that would be the action I would want. As a CEO of a relatively small, flat organization, I would want my director of operations to always keep me up to date on the levels of our supplies so that we don't run short, as well as kind of the run rate of those supplies. And so if that's the particular behavior we're trying to change, over reporting progress, let's go into our culture change cycle to see how we can do it. So I'm going to start with actions. What action do I want to start, stop, or modify? So what I want to start is an action where my director of operations reports to me the levels of inventory and the run rate we have on that inventory so we know when we're going to run out. So that's going to start because he's not doing that. It was his own responsibility and he wasn't doing it. So now, as the manager, I want to make sure that I have a safety net in case of failure. I want to make sure that I have that information. I'd like him to start reporting it. So when I look at the actions, I have to check in and say, what choice is he making consciously or subconsciously to lead to him not taking the action of reporting inventory levels? And when I look into it, I notice that in his environment, he doesn't really know what the levels are because we have no real inventory tracking system. So in his environment, right, he lives in an environment where he can't really accurately know what an inventory level is. So how could I possibly expect him to make the choice to report a level that he's not really sure of to me? So I've actually created an environment. I'm responsible for the environment where he can't fulfill his behavior as a lead follower, his effective behaviors, because he doesn't have the resources. Which leads us right back to when it comes to the behaviors of a manager, I actually failed at the enable and support level, right? So I need to enable and support my director of operations to make sure that he can provide me the information he needs. So when I go back to this, how can I change his environment so that he can make the choice to report the inventory levels and run rates to me, and I can see that through those reports showing up? Well, one way I could change his environment is to put some sort of inventory control system in place. So say I do that. Say I put some inventory control system in place so that now we have an accurate record of the inventory that we have, and he can figure out the run rates. Then he could make the choice, because he's got the right information now, to be able to keep me updated, take the action of sending me inventory reports on a weekly basis. So let's say we do that. We go on, and first week we get the report. Second week we get the report. Third week we don't. Fourth week we don't. Fifth week we don't. What happened? We did it, right? We changed the environment. He has the accurate levels, but he's now not making the choice to report those actions. So we go right back into this system. And what we need to do is look at the last one, the assessment. So he's not assessing a big enough changes in his environment to have him make the appropriate choice and take the effective action. And now I can address that a couple ways, and I'll probably address it two ways. The first thing I'm going to do is, odds are I haven't effectively done my role of setting a clear desired end state, right? I want him to understand what I expect as his manager. And so there I might share with him the reason why I need these reports so that we can be effective. I might talk about the fact that I want confidence that we're never going to run short on inventory. And the only way I can have that confidence, because I ultimately have ordering power, is for me to have this information. And I also want to make sure that I look at the desired end state from his perspective, and I say, I see what happens when the plant runs low on inventory. You have to run around with your hair on fire trying to source the information. So I don't want you to be in this state of panic either. So I want confidence that we're going to keep producing boxes, and I want to make sure that you're not running around in a panic state trying to fix this in the last minute situation. So I start there. So first thing I do is I want to change his environment by making sure he understands why, right? Fulfilling my behavior of setting and communicating a clear desired end state. The next thing I might do is look at the last part of this formula with assessment. So I changed his environment by putting a inventory control system in place, right? That was support and enable my leaders, which gives them the ability to make the choice to send me the report. But if he doesn't have the assessment, right, make the assessment that inventory is low, if his environment doesn't let him know that, how does he know that it's time to report that? So maybe I put in an alarm on the inventory control system that when it gets to a certain level, it sets off a little message or an alarm to him to let him know, right? Allow him to make the assessment that it's time to choose to send me the report. Now at this point, I've changed his environment 3 different ways, right? I've changed his environment by making sure he has a clear desired end state, both from my perspective and his perspective. I've changed his environment by enabling and supporting him in an inventory control system. And I've changed his environment by having the system produce an alarm that allows him to assess a change in his environment that will lead to the choice to send me the report. And I can see that in the action of consistent reports coming in. Now, this is loosely based on some experience I've had, so you can see how I didn't get it right the first time. Remember, like shampoo, rinse and repeat. And I don't want any jokes about how does Larry know anything about shampoo. I did have hair at one point. So rinse and repeat, right? You might not get it right. Behavior change is an art as much as it is a science, and there's a whole lot more to it than just the culture change cycle. But this is a really good place to enter into behavior change. But what I want you to do now to be able to diagnose leadership, management, or following behavior change that you'd like to see by leveraging that culture change cycle and then implement it, right? Remember, learn, practice, experience. So learn it, practice it, experience it. Go through that exercise right now as kind of a throwaway example, something that doesn't matter too much. That's your practice. And then go ahead and gain experience with it by taking an actual problem and working through it. And what's even more powerful is to do this with the individual. Bring them in. Let's talk about it. Let's go through it together. What do we need to change in your environment so that you can make the effective choices and take the effective actions that will lead us all to the desired end states that we want in fulfilling our ambitions? So I've absolutely had a wonderful time teaching you. This is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just the entry into a lifetime of being able to effectively be on the teams that are so critical in your life as an individual, as a family, or in your professional world. So I can't wait to see you again and pass you more of these critical foundational principles that not only enabled me to be successful as a SEAL, but to run successful businesses, and most importantly, be a successful teacher, passing this unbelievable information to all of you. So thank you for honoring me with your time and attention, and I can't wait to see you in the next class.